did more than 10 speed climbs, and these are peaks higher than 6,000 meters in 26 days. Can you tell us what are speed climbs and what inspired you to do this?
So firstly, Yukti, thank you so much, and Kosha, for having me. Inviting me to have a chat with you. And I've been we have been in touch over the years, and I've been using some of the products and everything. So I'm pretty excited to finally, actually have a video call and be, get out and get chatting with you. So thank you for this opportunity. Appreciate it. So getting on to the question, I did a project in now this is June. So I did it in June this year. The goal of the project was pretty simple. The idea was to climb 10 6,000 meter plus peaks, minimum 10 6,000 meter plus peaks within 30 days. And I ended up doing 10 peaks in about 26 days, and I did one peak twice. So essentially I went up 11 6,000 meter peaks, but I'm just counting individual climbs, so 10 of them in 26 days. What I did was, like you asked, speed climbing. So it is a bit of a, I'm exploring this answer myself. But if you just break it down simply, speed climbing is essentially just going up a mountain as fast as you possibly can, and go up and come down as fast as you possibly can. Now, I started doing this last year after the lockdown, when I did Friendship Peak and I did Deotippa, where I went up these mountains and came down in one push. And the idea started with Friendship Peak. This idea has been brewing in my head for many years, because this is not something that's uncommon globally, right? We keep reading about people all over the world throughout history doing variations of this, right? Whether it's Uri Steck or Reinhold Messner or Wojtek Kurtika, all these guys have been doing variations of these same things over the years, and this is just, for me at least, natural progress. And in the current times we are living in, this is what people are doing more and more, right? With Kieren and David Lama and Danny Arnold, all these guys and many other people, right? Essentially doing ascents at a much faster timeline. So that's what I did, and I've been dreaming of these things for many years. Started it with Friendship Peak last year, then did Deotippa, and then came on to the 10 peaks this year.
Awesome to actually keep stepping out of your comfort zone time and time again. Our trainer talks about that, challenging yourself, but you're actually doing it on a regular basis.
That's the joy in it. I think I don't want to repeat things at all. I want to keep trying to do new things, and that's why I'm in Badami as well, right? I am very bad when it comes to things on the rock and climbing on, whether it's bouldering or sport routes. And the idea of being here is to be able to get out of my comfort zone, climb these rocks behind me, and learn something new.
Super. So how does it feel accomplishing this incredible feat?
I think, thank you so much for considering that it's pretty incredible. So appreciate it. I think for me, it seems like a pretty regular thing, in the sense it didn't seem anything too out of the ordinary. I trusted that I could pull it off in theory, and just went with my belief in myself. To actually pull it off practically, it definitely seemed pretty awesome. Especially I remember when I did the last peak, right, the 10th peak, I was just so excited and just overjoyed about it. I remember coming down from the peak, meeting my friend, and just jumping around. I was suddenly full of energy. So it does feel incredible to sort of pull it off, because it's easy to at least it's one thing building something up in your head and putting down on paper in theory, and it's another thing actually pulling it off. So pulling it off was pretty awesome. But essentially for me, I just look at it as a step in a stepping stone in the natural order of progression. So I did something last year, and then I was like, what next? And the 10 peaks is what I thought of. And then on to the next thing.
Just to give context, what Kieren is, making out to seem fairly simple. The same mountain take us anywhere from 7 to 10 days to climb, and each one of them takes that much time, and he's done it in a matter of hours. So hence super incredible.
I mean, it's if you actually break it down, it seems pretty doable for anyone, at least in my head, right? Like, I mean, it seems pretty doable because the biggest crux in the whole thing is usually fitness and acclimatization. And luckily, I've been like training for many years. So like, if anyone is fit enough, I think they have the skills and ability to pull it off. And the next thing is playing around with the acclimatization. And a lot of time usually goes in that. So if you are able to understand your body and acclimatize well, I think it's in the realms of doable for everyone. But with the right preparation always.
Since you're talking about training and acclimatization, if you could just enlighten us a little bit about over how many years have you been preparing for this, and what really goes into training and acclimatizing for even an expedition, if not something as intense as what you have done?
Yeah. So essentially, see, like I've been running. That's the sport I started off with, and I've been running for we're in 22, so 12 years now. We're in 21, so 11 years now, and I have been doing things like ultra running for 9 of these years. Like I did my first 100k in 2012. So 9 of these years is when I've spent just a lot of this time doing ultras and putting in essentially a lot of mileage. So the base fitness in terms of endurance is something that I have been building consistently over the years for various sports that I've been doing. And now that is something I'm able to translate into these projects. The last 5 years, 6 years since I've been in Manali, I've been focusing a lot more on trail running. So naturally that made me even fitter for the mountains and my mountain goals and projects, right? So essentially training is what I've been doing over the years. I wouldn't say I did anything specific of any sort for in training perspective for any of these projects, whether it was Deotiba, whether it was Friendship Peak, or the 10 Peaks, right? The biggest thing that I played around with was acclimatization. I didn't really, for either of these projects, for Friendship Peak, I didn't do any acclimatization. I just went and did it. For Deotiba, I did spend a few days in the build-up doing acclimatization. I went up to a certain about 5,500 odd meters. For the 10 Peaks, I actually didn't do any acclimatization as well. So I landed in Somariri in Karzok. The day I landed, the next day I went up to 5,000 meters. And the day after that, I went up to 6,000 meters and I did my first peak. And once I did my first peak, the time the stopwatch had started, so there was no turning around for that. So then I was like, you know what, I'm just going to keep going at it now. So after I did my first peak, I just started going for the next peak and the next peak. Luckily, I didn't fall ill, and also I sort of kept tabs on myself. Like I was keeping whenever I would come down, I would keep check my blood saturation levels. I would make sure I'm sleeping well, eating well. I was checking my blood saturation levels at different altitudes as well. So I was doing it at 5,000 meters, 5,500, 6,000 meters at the summit of Karzok Kangri when I did it. And I was sort of checking these levels consistently throughout the project to make sure I sort of have, just to have some basic information about my health and acclimatization. So I kept track of these things and kept pushing along and kept coming along. And luckily, I didn't get affected by acclimatization at any point, and I was able to pretty smooth sailing from a physical perspective at least. My struggles were the mental aspect. So
could you tell us, what was the most challenging part of the climbs?
There were multiple things that was very new to me in this whole process, right? This is something that I had never done, a project over 1 month. So the logistics was quite a challenge, trying to understand the logistics. Information was quite challenging as well. There was very little information that we had, so not much available online, so very little available. in terms of trying to understand what mountains I was climbing and the routes. Like I didn't, other than I think one mountain, I didn't know the route for any other mountain as well. So it was just going on ground while I was climbing, just trying to use my understanding of what I was seeing and just going up mountains. So logistically, that way it was quite challenging, and it was exciting as well. That was part of the adventure. I think it was quite a lot of fun. I remember climbing up one wrong mountain one day, thinking I was climbing, I forget the name, Sharasua South, I think. I was climbing that mountain and I ended up climbing a different peak, thinking I'd climbed Sharasua South, and then I down climbed that mountain and then climbed up Sharasua again and then got back. So it was quite a bit of like adventure from that perspective. The biggest challenge though, I think, was the whole mental aspect of it, right? Being at it every day, because it was not like I was just the end, like climbing one mountain was the end of it. It was, I would go up one mountain and then while I was coming down, I would usually be like, I need to plan for the next mountain. So there was no mental peace in terms of the planning, and my head was always like, like functioning. So there was no time to sort of enjoy the little, I mean, I did enjoy the little joys on the summit or beautiful locations on the mountain, but they were short-lived joys, and mostly my head was running. Like I'll be thinking while down climbing a mountain about how to climb the next mountain, where's the next mountain, when to start the next day. So I was thinking a lot about these things, and also since we didn't know which mountains were where, it was a lot of, I didn't know how to, like, if we saw the mountain, I didn't know the start of the trek to that mountain. So just that out was also like an adventure. So all of that was just generally mentally taxing from a mental perspective, and it was a very new experience for me, essentially.
Got it. So the temperature when you would have started climbing from the base camp to the summit would have varied anywhere from about 30 degrees to sub-zero by the time you reached the summit. Through how did you keep warm during these varying temperature conditions?
So essentially, firstly, I need to again thank you for this, because I think last year you had sent me a merino wool down base layer, right? And I think that's been a saving grace, because I think that has been that's been the base layer. I pretty much lived in it the whole month, because the base layer. So had that on, and then usually a t-shirt. So I mostly started around daylight in the mornings. I never started before the sun, before daylight. So I would usually, whenever I'd start, it would be fairly decent temperatures, not too cold or not too warm. But I would always essentially have the base layer on and a t-shirt on top of that. And I would carry a down jacket, or I would carry a waterproof jacket, depending on the weather conditions. Mostly when I would get to the top of a mountain, it would be extremely windy. And some of the days, we started, I remember doing Mentok 3, and on the other side of Mentok, there was bad weather coming in. So as soon as I got to the ridge, I was climbing up a sunny face, and then I got to the ridge and it was snowing on the other side. So just within a couple of minutes, I had sun on one side, on the other side it was snowing and windy, right? So essentially I would climb with, when the sun was out, with a base layer and a t-shirt. And when it would get windy or it would snow, then I would either add a down layer or a thermal layer or a waterproof layer. So these are the few layers I played around with all the time. So I had a down jacket that Huzefa from Blue Bolt had sent me, right? So I had a down, and then I would just add either have the down or I have a waterproof layer on top of it. Yeah. So it's basically 3-4 layers is what I played around with most of the time. Yeah.
Sure. And during the activity, it's important to stay light for you.
Exactly.
Even keep with the pace.
Exactly. I mean, it gets every gram matters at some point, right? So yeah, and also I actually use the socks as well a lot, especially when I was climbing with my boots on. So I would whenever I'd get at certain point on the mountain, where I would have to change into my mountaineering boots and my crampons and stuff, that's when I would actually use the socks as well. I don't remember the name, but they're merino wool socks as well, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, a technical socks.
The technical socks, yes. So
Kieren, like as an entrepreneur, I've actually been working on improving the technical fabric and the features
Yes.
of our thermal wear or the base layers that you're referring to for the last 10 years. Just basis the gap that we identified in the market, we needed products that were suited for varying activities and that were multifunctional. So
Yes.
I'd love to know your feedback as an athlete who has, been using these
Yeah.
using the base layers over the years. How has
Yeah. So so since I've had the base layers that you provided me by Kosha, right? Like I have been living in it. Last year I used it throughout the ice climbing season when I was climbing ice in Lahore, and also when I was in Lahore last year, I used to run in the mornings. So before I'd go ice climbing, I'd like wake up at 6, 7 in the morning and go go for a run. So, and I remember running many times in Lahore in like minus 20 degrees. So when I would run at that time, like I would mostly come back from a run with like ice frozen on my beard or my like eyebrows and everything. So I actually used the base layer at that time a lot as well. So what I would do is use the base layer, a t-shirt, and just a waterproof or a windproof on top of that, and go for my run. So I would like layering up plays a big. It would be cold because like minus 20 when you step out, it is cold, especially if you just have one layer. But I would start running, and but I'd for like a 10-15K run, and within the run, it would be very warm. So the first 10 minutes or so of this when I would start the run would be like chilly, but once I'd get into the groove and I'll be running, I'll be like very warm. So I mean, I didn't need another thicker layer basically when I was heading out for a run. And like for me, it's a pretty awesome base layer because it's very thin, it's very light. So I think the whole weight to heat sort of ratio, warmth ratio is pretty high and pretty awesome, pretty good. Because for me, it's like I would use the base layer for anything wherever I want to be light and fast, or if I'm going slow as well, because it does the job, right? And yeah, so for me, it's pretty awesome that way. And I've been like I mentioned earlier, right? Like been living in the technical socks as well. Like the socks is what I pretty much always use whenever I'm putting my mountaineering boots on, whether it's for ice climbing or for the mountaineering side of things. And I've used the base layer in at Deotipa. I've used it throughout the winters and during the 10 Peaks project. So yep, I've been putting it through its paces.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's really nice to hear, because one of the challenges we were trying to overcome when we were developing the product was to ensure that it is regulating temperature between the hot and the cold. So
Exactly.
it's interesting that you mentioned that.
Exactly. Like I think I've been able to use it on like a warm, sunny day in the mountains and on real cold days as well. So it's clear that, at least for me, from a user perspective, it's clear that I've been able to use it in quite fluctuating weather temperatures.
Coming back to your climb, it is an incredible feat actually scaling more than 6,000 meter peaks in under 26 days. If you were to do something similar again, or for your next challenge, what would you do different?
A lot would work differently. For starters, I know the physical skills I need to develop for that, and the technical skills I want to develop for that. So I think that would be one of my prime goals at the moment, to get technically and physically a lot more stronger for the project. I would say technically more so than physically, because I think I want to be more confident about the technical knowledge that I have in whether it's the rope work or the technical knowledge, using ice axes or whatever it is, right? I just want to get, because that's not something I've had too much access to. So with things like being in Badami and doing a lot more ice climbing, that's the idea with it, to sort of get more comfortable, right? Like in more exposed areas, in more vertical terrain, and get more comfortable with more technical gear. And that's what I want. I'm essentially going to work a lot harder on. Like I did work on it in the past as well, but I realized that I need to work even more at it. So that's one skill that I'm going to, and there's no end to it. So I want to just keep developing those skills and take it more seriously. The next would be, I think, just planning my logistics a lot better as well. While it was quite an adventure in the previous project, I think in the coming project, if I want to be more efficient with my climbing and with my time, planning the logistics would play a big role. Having everything functioning a lot smoother. And it's been a learning process for me and my team, right? Like Ankit, he did the best he could, and I think if he was not involved, it would have been even crazier for me. But I guess for him and for me, it's just like, again, we learn from it and we sort of like build on that. And I think between him and me, we've sort of we know how to improve on what we've done. And it's a journey, right? You do something, you learn, and then keep progressing.
Sure. So, for somebody who is planning an expedition, what are the common mistakes that they make in terms of training as well?
Yeah. So, could you repeat it in terms of training and in terms of?
As well as in preparation of clothing.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. When it comes to clothing and gear, I'm a bit of a sucker about it, right? Like, I like to have good gear, and I have realized the importance of good gear. Whether like it's not just about light gear or heavy gear, but good gear. Whether the comfort it provides you, the confidence it provides you is just next level, right? I don't want to get stuck in an extreme condition and not have reliable gear on me. That's like the last thing you want to face, because see, facing bad weather, being in tricky situations, getting stuck in a nasty place, these are things that you will sort of like come across and sort of you will experience. You can't control that as much, but the gear you use you can control, because that's something you plan months in advance. So I think having good gear, and honestly like putting that, like if you invest in good gear, it will pay off, and you'll just be you'll have one load off your mind. So good gear is everything, right? Like whether it's a backpack, whether it's your shoes, whether it's your clothing, whether it's your eyewear, whether it's a cap that you wear, like the way you carry water, all of it, right? Like plays such a big role. And if you can be comfortable with gear, it'll just allow you to perform more efficiently and be a lot more comfortable in the mountains and focus at the job at hand, at pushing yourself hard. So I think gear is something that people should definitely put in that time and resources and effort into. And the next would be preparation. I think preparation is very specific in terms of physical preparation. Very specific. It should always be very specific to whatever objective you have at hand. So it starts off first with research work, with reading, and it starts off with trying to understand what you need for the undertaking you're sort of you're heading towards. Once you identify that, then you identify what is it that you lack, what are the skills you need to develop, and start working in that. And the way I approach it, usually I break it down and I work at the skill or the thing that's the weakest point, the weak link of the whole chain for me, and then I work at the things following that. And essentially what I've realized in time is that you're always in this whole chain, and the things that you have to link up in terms of training, you're always going to have a weak link, irrespective of how good you get and how much you keep progressing. You're always going to have a weak link, and you keep working at the weak link, and you keep progressing and keep getting better and stronger and stronger. And it's a constant process. So if you start off with one project, then you work on the next goal and the next goal, and you keep improving. But you should look at it as a long-term process for yourself. And then there's also the mental aspect of it, right? I think over the years, I've been giving more and more importance to the mental side of things as well. I think that's that's coming off with me getting older and older and just like giving and not being a 22-year-old just winging it and going all over the place and doing anything. I've been giving more importance to the whole mental aspect of it. And I definitely do think that plays a big role as well, and a huge role for sure. Mentally preparing yourself for your undertaking.
So, in terms of the mental preparation, if you could just throw some light on what are the few things we can work on. And I think we extend that to our city lives as well, just to become mentally stronger, to face any challenge that comes our way.
I think it's I like to break it down. For one, I get a lot of mental confidence out of the training and the preparation I do as well. So if I'm confident in the training that I've been doing, that also gives me the mental confidence, right? So that's one aspect of it. I have to be confident, and usually when you're just in your own thoughts and you're talking to yourself about these things, you should be brutally honest to yourself, and be honest about where you stand and what you're lacking and how you go about it. And that allows me to just sort of work at it and work harder at it, and not sort of get carried away by just I don't like to blow my own horn, trumpet, at least for myself. So whenever I'm preparing, I like to be as brutally honest to myself as I possibly can and honestly work at everything. So whenever I'm at the start of a race or a start of a project, if I've been brutally honest to myself, it allows me to be extremely confident about where I stand and the projection of my goal and how I want to approach it. Like I have been at start lines of races where I have been underprepared, and I've been usually scared at those races. And I've been at the start line of the races and the projects where I've been really well prepared and I've just been super confident about it. So that's one aspect of it. But over the years, I've started also just doing simple things like visualization and meditation, and just breaking down the whole process. Trying to, instead of thinking of the goal I have lying ahead of me as one big chunk, I've sort of started breaking it down into smaller bits and pieces. Instead of thinking of the Uttiba as one 20-hour outing, I've started thinking of it like a 5-hour outing. Things that are more reasonable for me to sort of consume. So I've essentially been playing around with these 3-4 things itself. And I mean, I think a lot of these things just can be applied for daily life, right? All the time. Whether it's being honest to yourself, evaluating yourself internally and self evaluation or something, or just doing breathing work to calm yourself down. I think you can just apply these things in daily life all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I totally relate to your aspect of putting your head down, doing what you have to do. That itself takes care of more than half the battle. So
exactly. Sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you shouldn't overthink anything as well, right? Just keep grinding on. Like, don't overthink it. Just like put your head down and get the work. I mean, you running a startup you would face immense challenges, right? So it's like you can't like overthink and try to like handhold everything, right? Like sometimes you just like keep at it.
Yeah, totally. So Kieren, as an entrepreneur, I understand and love to support athletes and Indian sport in every way and form. How do you think private investment can actually help build the ecosystem?
I have actually multiple thoughts about stuff like this. So when I started doing this full time, I was thinking about essentially something along these same lines, like how do you grow the whole ecosystem, right? So I think after all these years, at least, where the fact that you and me are having a conversation about this space, because I function in it and you're a brand that's functioning in the same space itself is progress for this ecosystem, right? Like 10 years back, it was not the same. 20 years back, it was not the same. So the fact that today we are sitting and people like me are functioning in this space, people like you are functioning in this space itself is showing progress. The other thing is I, as an athlete, have a bit of a athletic view, I guess I would say, and I honestly think the best way forward is, having uh, having athletes having the opportunity to push themselves hard on a global level, right? Not and because we do need infrastructure. We do need an infrastructure is immense. It's like if you're going the mountains, it's rescue, it's safety, it's communication, it's gear, it's information. There's so much that's there to it, right? But I also think like if we sort out, if athletes are able to get the opportunity to perform and push themselves, and this like athletically the standards should be on the global, where the global standards are. I think the rest will sort of keep following, right? Like if I have people to look up to, like if I had a trail runner that I would look up to who was performing on the highest levels, I think we would have had by now a lot more people, pushing hard, and a lot more people. Like if you have already get people to the top of the pyramid essentially, and then the base of the pyramid will sort of just keep building itself. I think of it from that perspective, because I think like if I had people to look up to who are performing on a crazy level, like not people from outside India, but Indians to look up to and to discuss and to sort of plan and work things out, I think I would have progressed a lot faster. And essentially, I think a lot more people would have progressed a lot faster. A lot more people would have entered the space as well. So I look at it from that perspective. And for an athlete in the outdoor space to get onto a global level at the moment, the only way I see forward is being abroad, being in an ecosystem which is already developed. Because as an athlete, we have limited timeline as well. So for us to develop the ecosystem within our country, it's going to take a lot of time. So the athletes you're looking at now will essentially lose out on this whole timeline if you build the ecosystem, work on the ecosystem first. But if you take a bunch of athletes, put them into an ecosystem that already exists, and they are able to shine and climb up the ladder at a much faster rate, you'll also start having a community back home, back over here, that starts building up at a faster rate. And then that also starts pushing the ecosystem over here. Because if you have a lot of people functioning in the outdoors, you suddenly need a lot more going. Even if it just comes from a political perspective in terms of vote bank, right? Like say if a politician needs to be like, oh man, I have like 20 lakh people coming and accessing these places, and I need to sort of like get them to vote for me, let me build these things. Even if it comes along that way, but it would, if as the whole community and the space progresses, because eventually the day and age we are in these days, almost every sport out there has a competitive angle to it as well, right? So if you just look at cricket as an example, right, like we need the Sachins and the Kapil Devs and the Padukons in every sport, or the Vijayendra Singhs or Sanyas. So we need them in every sport, right? And if we get them, the sport starts progressing, because suddenly everyone wants to be a part of it as well. I mean, we are all progressing in that direction, I think. It's just that it's slow because most of us don't have the access to doing it in the way people are these days. And I mean, look at climbing, right? Like if you want to get to the Olympics, imagine the people you're competing against. The people like Mondras and everyone and Narasaki and these folks have access to the top-notch training facilities and centers and coaches and everything. So if you want someone from India to sort of start competing against them, the bar is set real low. Suddenly you're like, so if you want, it's unreasonable to expect someone to start getting to the Olympics without having that, being present in the right ecosystem, I think. I mean, you can get it, but you're waiting for a long time. Yeah.
That's very interesting, Kieren. In fact, even Shruti Kotwal, who is speed ice skater representing India, she has moved base to the state, train there, and be able to perform for India at that level.
Yeah. I mean, you just look at someone like Neeraj Chopra, right? Like when he was, if I'm not mistaken, in Germany for a bunch of months, training in the facilities over there. So people are doing that in the more mainstream sports, I would say. I mean, I know javelin throw is not a mainstream sport, but it's still a athletic event, which is there in part of the Olympics and everything. But he's still, like someone like him, he had access to it. I mean, if you look at the badminton folks, they have access to a pretty awesome facility thanks to Gopi Chand, right, in Hyderabad. So I mean, you don't need to go abroad if you have the whole ecosystem and facilities present, but it takes time. And if you want to see changes in the next few years, you can't think about building the ecosystem. You should build the ecosystem, that plays a role. But if you want to see athletic changes and progress in the next few years, you need to, and that's a fast rate. So you want folks to have access to the best of it, right? Like, I mean, for example, just getting simple gear for outdoor sports is still a problem, right, in India. Whether it's climbing shoes or it's ropes or an ice axe or whatever it is, right? It's still not accessible. So how do you expect someone to start performing when you still don't have access to basic things? I mean, for me as a trail runner, it's like it's still not easy, the easiest to have access to trail running shoes, simple things of that sort, right? In India at least. So yeah, like you're starting at the benchmark's set pretty low from where you're starting out, and the expectations are top notch. I mean, from myself and from everyone as well. It's not wrong. It's just that got to be a little realistic about it. I mean, I'm not realistic about it for myself. So yeah.
It's fascinating and a lot of respect, because you are setting benchmarks time and time again, crossing the own benchmarks that you have set, and you are proving to be inspiration for those who want to pursue something in the outdoors as well.
Not at all.
You are asking all the right questions and helping identify gaps to build an ecosystem in the days to come.
But not at all. I think, honestly, I think it's a pretty selfish pursuit. Essentially, what I'm trying to do is I want to just, be the best I can possibly be. And my benchmark of where I want to be the best, that's pretty high. And I just see whatever I'm doing as still like fairly basic, because it's just a stepping stone to actually where I want to get. So I mean, I cannot claim, cannot lay claim on the fact that I'm helping the sport or the ecosystem, because honestly, I think it's fairly a selfish pursuit of me just trying to do my stuff.
Kieren, I'm going to take that modesty as a lesson.
Not at all. No, it's not modesty. I think it's just honest. Just being honest, I guess.
Sure. So, on a lighter note, since New Year is around the corner, what are your plans? How are you planning to bring it in?
Oh, so I came. I left Manali a few days back, and I came to Bangalore thinking I didn't do my return tickets, right? So I thought I'll probably leave by the 3rd or 4th of December. But I've been in Bangalore like all of 48 hours, and I know for a fact I'm not going back around the 3rd, 4th December. I think it's probably might just end up getting extended till Christmas. Most likely I'll probably be in Lahore for New Year's or Manali for New Year's, around there. If not there, I'll probably be in Bangalore. And I mean, my folks are in Bangalore, so my parents have like shifted here just recently. So it's a good excuse to finally be home. Like, I've come home after a year, so good excuse to be home. And they would be, I'm pretty sure, more than excited to just keep extending my stay here. But I've been loving being in Bangalore after, it's been like 4 or 5 years since I've come back to Bangalore, and I've been loving it, like running in the city and also like meeting so many people. Like right now, because I'm more into climbing, I'm getting to meet the whole climbing ecosystem, society, community, and meeting some new people. Like I'm out here with Kuju, and I was out climbing at LPC the other day, and now I'm out here with Kuju climbing over here. So it's pretty awesome that I'm getting to meet so many new folks, and from another, like, not just running space but a new sport, and do new things. And also like Bangalore, the whole climbing community is pretty awesome, right? Like getting to learn a lot of new stuff. So this whole time, like in Bangalore, is going to be like a educational trip for me, I think. Learning new things, and I'm enjoying it. Like, being completely new at something is so much fun. And at these days, I'm completely new at a couple of things. Like, I've picked up skateboarding, so I'm like just falling around half the time. So I'm like completely new at that, and it's so much joy. And then, I'm doing so much of the sport too, and being like just a complete novice at it, and it's like quite joyful for sure.
Bring back memories of trying to learn how to ski and constantly falling in the snow.
Yeah.
Absolutely enjoyable at the time.
Exactly.
Awesome. Kieren, it's been an absolute delight speaking to you. Wishing you all the best, and
Thank you so much.
keep continuing to experience the higher heights.
Thank you so much. I definitely appreciate chatting with you, and thank you for the conversation and your time. And and thank you for providing me with pretty awesome base layers and everything. Like, it's been a lifesaver. So thank you so much for that. And
It's
appreciate it.
our honor, Kieren.
I mean, you're doing awesome work with it, so I'm glad I'm able to use it and get to experience it myself. So it's do appreciate it, and great work for sure.
Sure. It's mutual.